Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Steve, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. I am very excited to get to know you on a deeper level. We've seen each other at conferences before, maybe said a sentence or two, but this will be our first, I think, real conversation. So hopefully,
I think so.
hopefully
I've known about you for forever. So you're in you're a pillar in the industry. But yeah, it's nice to talk with you.
I mean, talk about pillar of the industry. You are to me, you're a bit of an enigma. Because it seems like everything you touch turns to gold.
Wow.
But you also seem to have so much experience in e-learning for lawyers. And if I'm not mistaken, you're not a lawyer, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, that's right.
Even going back to 2003 and you started a company then, but I think, and you have so much experience, but most recently you took a company, SkillBurst, you started, I think, in 2013. Is that
very
right?
good? Yeah, that's exactly right. Started in 2013.
Yeah. So it's been a hot second, and you recently sold to Barbri in 2024. Barbri is eating up the e-learning space. I might have spoken to them a couple times as well. They're speaking to everybody. So I'm interested in hearing that story as much as you can share.
Sure.
But before we go there, I just wanted to give you some background on Lawyers Who Learn. As you know, Lawline's been around actually for 25 years this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And we've served 10 million courses, which is so cool.
Wow.
It's also recognizing, and as you've been in e-learning, on-demand learning, and I know you go beyond that, and a lot of you do, can only take you so far. And like there's coaching and there's other areas, but a lot of the learning that you do is outside of the course. It's in your actual practice of law or whatever you do. And so what this podcast hopes to uncover is how you learn and grow. And obviously you're not an attorney, but most people are, but you're so into it. How you learn and grow, just being an entrepreneur in the legal tech space, ed tech space. So that's the purpose. And for me, it's an excuse to talk to awesome people like you. And I can tell you, hopefully a handful of other people benefit from it, especially those in the legal tech or lawyer space. So a question that before we just get into your whole story.
Yeah.
The question that I've been starting off with a lot that seems to sometimes lead to an interesting path is, I know you speak a lot, you do a lot of podcasts, you've been in the industry a lot. Is there any topic that you haven't really been asked about or talked about that has really been something you've wanted to talk about as it relates to how you've learned and grown and been evolved over the years as an individual and an entrepreneur? And if not, we can just go to the regular.
No, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to answer that question because, it's doing the transaction recently, the acquisition, it gave me a pause. Normally you're just so busy just plowing forward with business, right? You've got goals to meet, you've got clients that you want to serve, you've got employees, you've got everything, and you're just kind of plowing forward. And when you get to the point where you actually in talks for an acquisition, even if you don't go all the way through, you take a minute and you reflect back because you have to tell the story and you have to share what the benefits are and what the value add of the organization is. And then when you actually do sell, and I've been building this company for 12 years, and when it actually was the day to sign on the dotted line, it was actually 2 days after my daughter went off to her freshman year of college. So I feel like I sent 2 kids off into the world like within a matter of a few hours. So it was a very introspective, retrospective moment for me. And, one of the things that I learned is even with the transaction, and you can say, that's kind of like was the goalpost I had for a long time, build a business from nothing and to acquisition and sell it. And just to be completely candid with you, after the original euphoria of signing on the dotted line and we did it and getting through due diligence and everything, I felt kind of empty a little bit. I have to admit, I felt a little bit like, now what? I felt a little bit like, well, that was a great deal, but I know other people are seeing other people doing bigger deals. And there was a little bit of that, comparison that you do, and you start looking at yourself and going, was it really all that? And I just felt a little rudderless for just a little bit of time. And so it's been a very interesting period for me since the acquisition last fall to kind of figure out who I am when I don't have that CEO cap on that I had that built, I built a business and I run it. And so it's been really interesting to me to learn about myself and something that I think needs to be talked about more. What do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I think that's rung true for me quite a bit lately. And just figuring out how to separate. I always thought I did a good job with work-life balance, or at least I tried, but I realized how much of myself was actually wrapped up in being an entrepreneur and being a CEO. And so I've been learning a lot about that. And I think that that's something that I'd like to talk about more going forward. I've been talking about the technology and training lawyers and, AI and the intersection of this and that for forever. But I think this is an area I want to focus on a little more as I go forward as well.
I love that. And I do want to better understand SkillBurst and the learning and how
Sure.
you design that. Let's dive into this component. By the way, I'm sure, first of all, you've sold several businesses already, correct?
This was my second. The first one was a
Okay.
very small transaction that
Got it.
I did years ago. And so this was the first. I've been involved in M&A because I was on the executive team of a company that was a platform and was private equity owned. So I've been involved in M&A, but they weren't my companies, except for one I did years ago. So this was my second, but this was definitely a bigger one than the first.
And I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable because it
Mhm.
is, as even now, as you've been going through it, it is one of the most common things you hear when somebody sells a business,
Yeah,
how much they didn't realize their life was tied to that because the emptiness of not having a clear path afterwards, regardless of how much money you get on the exit,
sure.
it still feels like, okay, now what? And so,
Hmm.
so reflecting back, and sometimes there's focus and direction where you're like, okay, I'm going to stay on for 2 years. It
Hmm.
sounds like you didn't. Is that correct?
I didn't. I stayed on for a little while to help with transition and all that. I have to say, Barbri was wonderful about the transition. And, Steve, we'd love to have you. You do what you need to do. We'd love, I have an agreement with them to consult back. So I'm still every once in a while hopping on the
Yeah.
phone, helping out with a client, things like that. But they've been very flexible about that.
And so maybe taking just 2 steps back and we'll dive
Sure.
there. By the way, I'm going to ask any question, anything that is not any of my business or you don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Obviously, just feel like, well, that's something we don't talk about. But I'm just
Sure.
curious because you hear that also sometimes when you're approached by a business to buy you, you weren't
Hmm.
necessarily thinking about it. Then all of a sudden you sort of go in that route. And I'm just curious, like, because there are a lot, I don't know, I think
Hmm.
um, Legal Tech Hub published 500 legal tech companies now that include AI in their
Yeah.
tools and services now, and
Not
that's
surprised.
just from what they
Yeah.
had. And so there's a lot of legal tech entrepreneurs wishing for an exit at some point, and we'll be able to learn from this process. So maybe if you
Yeah.
could take us a little bit, as much as you can, through the when did you decide you wanted to sell? How did that process go?
Hmm.
And just taking us from the beginning to this moment where you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah, sure. So I'd always had in the back of my mind that someday I would probably exit through an acquisition. Um, it was never I never put a date on the calendar. I never put a number in my mind when we hit X in revenue or X in EBITDA. That's the day we, go on the market. I was never, that was never the goal. The goal was to build a great business, really work closely with our clients, really take care of our employees, and just try to have fun with it. And I was very proud of what we built. And I wasn't looking at the time for an exit. Um, like any business, and I'm sure you've been approached many times from this, you get the email out of the blue from somebody, hey, I'm looking to buy a business. Would you like to talk? You get those all the time. You get every once in a while, you go to a dinner with somebody,
And
whether
I
it's
got the email from Barbary themselves.
I'm sure you did. You get an invitation to dinner. Maybe it's a strategic buyer. Maybe it's a PE firm. Maybe it's you get all kinds of opportunities. And I always left myself open to them. Somebody wanted to have dinner. Why not? Or grab coffee and talk about it. I was happy to talk about it. I always am happy to talk about the business because I was very proud of it. So, and I feel every one of those conversations, you learn a little something too. So you have one of those conversations, even if it's like when you go for a job interview when you were younger and you're like, well, I'm not really interested in this job, but I'm going to go because it'll be good practice for me to go through the interview process. And that's how I saw these conversations. And I started talking to Barbary a few years ago. A couple of years ago, they approached us and we weren't ready. And Barbary was just like, that's great. Let's just keep talking. It's like, we'll see you at the conferences. CEO is going to be in town. We should have dinner in New York. It was one of those kind of things. And I got to know them and really started to like them. And I could tell that one of the things that was really important to me was that my team, a lot of people had been with me for years and years and years. I wanted to make sure that everybody was kind of taken care of. So that was really important. I wanted them to go into an environment where they could continue to do the work they were doing. It wasn't going to just be like the organization was going to be chopped up and looking for economies where they could say, oh, redundancies. Oh, we have people that do this, so we don't need this part of the SkillBurst team anymore. So when I saw that in Barbary, I thought this actually might be a good fit. And you reach points. There are points in your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner where you hit these plateaus, right? You hit these areas where, I mean, you have to keep innovating. You can't just rely on what you did 2 years ago and hope that that's going to work 2 years from now. So you're constantly innovating. And we had reached a point where, especially with AI coming onto the scene, where we were going to need to really invest in redoing some of the stuff we did. Also, we were at a point where we had a really good cross section of the North American market. You name a large law firm in North America, odds are we were in there. Globally, it was much smaller. Now we had a lot of like the London office of the U.S. firm or the Sydney office but we didn't have. We had a few, but we didn't have a critical mass of firms that were based outside of North America, and we didn't have the engine to do that, and it was going to take some investment. And Barbary, in this case, did. And they have a global sales force and a global footprint. And so there were things that just made sense at the time. And so we went into talks, and I had these old sayings in the back of my mind from all the people I talked to in M&A over the years, like 90+% of M&A deals fail before they get to closing. So I was like, well, we'll start the process and we'll go through due diligence and it'll be a lot of work, but it'll teach us what we need to know and where the holes are for the next one, right? That was kind of my mindset. Like, we'll try, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll learn from it and we'll learn where we got to get these part of the books better. We got this this over here, we got to clean up a little bit. We got to get our story better on that. But to our surprise, we closed. And so it was quite a journey, but, and I learned a ton along the way. It was really hard. Anybody who's gone through the due diligence process, even though in this particular case, I think the buyer did a lot to try and make it easier for us. But it's a lot when you're running a business and you can't go broadcasting to your whole team and to the world that you're doing this. And so you're going to be a little busy because you're going through due diligence. So going through that process, kind of keeping it on the down low. We also had our biggest year from growth standpoint last year as well. So we were growing. We rolled out our new Gen AI e-learning series. We rolled out a couple other series. So we were launching products. We were growing quite a bit, and we were going through due diligence all at the same time. So it was a hell of a process. And to go from that and then slamming on the brakes to waking up one day and going, oh, I'm done. That was the real contrast. If you compare what I'm doing right now to what I was doing 6 months ago or 8 months ago, it's really kind of crazy.
Wow, no, that definitely. I was able to kind of be in your shoes for a moment there and go through that. And so, just going to what you said is how you dealt with it afterwards. I do see, when I go to your site, I do see you're in stealth mode for something else.
Yeah, I can't help myself.
Was your therapy okay? What's next? So what was there a low moment that like you haven't even got into yet that was like your lowest moment? And then how did you sort of just turn it back on and going?
It's a good question. I haven't really had a lowest moment yet. I don't think.
Okay.
Maybe it's still coming. I don't know, but it hasn't even been, hasn't been that long. So as I said, I stayed on and helped with transition for a bit for a while, and then earlier this year, I left full-time employment with them and put a consulting agreement in place, and I took 2 days off. and then incorporated and started a new business. And I am in stealth mode right now, so I can't say too much about it. If all goes well, you'll learn more about it this summer. But it's another product. It's focused on the legal industry again, because when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So focus. But I mean, to be honest with you, I spent 20 plus years building up relationships in the legal industry in large law firms. And while I have to be very careful with my non-competes and not to step on anybody's toes, which I'm very, very serious about, there's still a lot of room in the legal industry to do other things. And so I'm going to leverage those relationships and my knowledge of, what firms are dealing with and where their needs are. And I'm building something new, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun because I like building stuff. One of the things that gets harder as you go on and build a successful business is you get into a little bit of keeping the trains running. You get personnel issues and pricing and sitting with the accountants and, you name it. And right now, because I'm in stealth mode and I'm in true startup mode again, it's kind of fun to just be building something without having to worry about all that. And if all goes well, I'll be back to all the day-to-day stuff that you do when you have a big business. But right now it's kind of fun doing something else.
A lot of entrepreneurs are the startup entrepreneurs who end up running a business that they want to just get back to the startup mode to some degree. What books have you relied on? Is there any books that you dusted off your shelf now that you're back in startup mode, or that your podcast? I always love hearing, and if you have your Kindle nearby, or your Audible, feel free to open it up, and I would love to hear some.
Got a book sitting right here that I just dusted off. I've read it twice over the years, and it's a classic. It's Built to Last. I don't know if you've read that one recently, but it's a great book, and I think it always gets me kind of jazzed up. I love the message.
Is that Jim Collins?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can look. It's right here. Built to Last. Yeah, Jim Collins. Yeah, very good. So yeah, it's a great book because it always gets me jazzed up because I love the message in it. It's all about, just to really paraphrase an entire book down to a sentence, it's really all about building a good business, and that's really focused on some core strategies, and the money will come. Like, it's really like, do the right thing, build a good business. I'm probably, murdering the takeaways from this book, but that's kind of what I take away from it, is that if you stick to your core principles, and it's really hard when you're trying to get to a point where you've reached some new revenue target or something like that. And remember, all revenue is not good revenue. So it's really important to remind yourself of that. And I think that's what this book helps me remember, is why you get into business in the first place. Like, why, of all the things I could have started, why did I start a company, not being a lawyer myself? Why did I start a company that built e-learning resources for lawyers? It's because there was something that was really interesting in there for me. And I started it with there was a passion around it. And flash forward a decade plus later, and, you start getting just kind of pulled into the day to day. And I think it's really important to kind of remember why you started that in the first place.
But let's go down that path. What was really interesting? Why did you?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go back to the books. I haven't forgot, but I just want to go down that path.
Yeah.
What is your why behind
So
this?
I started out, my background's I have a undergrad degree in computer science and information science. And I have a master's in public administration, which I never use. But the beginning of my career was all about, I worked for large management consulting firms like PwC, writing mainframe code for large government agencies. I mean, that's where I started. And while I was doing that, I got what called a tour of duty when I was at PwC. It was Price Waterhouse then, before the C. But I got put on a tour of duty to the Global Training Center in Tampa, Florida, where I was asked to come down and teach how to be a consultant, how to write code, how to work with clients. PW back in those days, they'd bring all new consultants, all new associates from all around the world to Tampa, Florida for a 3-month boot camp. I mean, this was back in the day. This is the 90s. And they put him through, 8 to 10 hours of training every day in the Global Training Center. And I was asked to come do a tour of duty and teach for like 6 weeks. So I got permission from my partner in DC to go down and teach for 6 weeks in Tampa. I loved it, ended up staying for 3 years. And so I got really involved in training at the corporate level, and I loved it. It was all stand-up training. There was no e-learning. It was all stand-up training. I loved it. And at one point, it came time, my partner was like, "You got to get back up here to DC. We need to get you on some engagements again. Your fun's over." And I went, "No, I'm good. I'm not going to do that." I went out on my own. I hung out a shingle and I immediately started consulting on what I'd been doing for PwC, which was building basically technology and consulting boot camps and management consulting boot camps. And PwC ended up being my biggest client at the time, but there was the dot-com boom and there was all kinds of stuff going on. So I did it for years, just consulting and basically the intersection of technology and corporate training, professional development and technology. That's where I played. And my clients were, and this is the first company I built. You alluded to years ago that I sold. Clients were, big advertising firms, government agencies. We had one of the big casinos out in Las Vegas was a client of ours. So, did that kind of training, and then I met the brand new director of professional development, or I can't remember what her title was, for Howry, Simon, Arnold and White, which doesn't exist anymore. But if you remember Howry, number one global litigation firm, antitrust firm, biggest firm in the world before they went belly up. But she had this was Heather Bach. I don't know if you know Heather. Heather Bach
sounds very familiar.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's the chief global learning officer for Hogan Lovells now, but she was at Howry. And when she joined Howry, she's not an attorney, and she came from America Online. And that tells you how long ago this was. So she came from AOL, and she went in there and she had some ideas of stuff she wanted to do, and I got introduced to her. And the two of us just kind of put our heads together and said, well, I've been doing e-learning for other organizations as part of the work I was doing. It wasn't really called e-learning. It was called CBT, if you remember that term, right? Computer-based training.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that term from way back when?
Before my time.
Yeah, great. And makes me feel real old. And so we put our heads together and I was like, well, there's all kinds of stuff we can be doing. And I remember thinking to myself one day, wow, I can't believe how backwards this huge law firm, offices all over the world, thousands of lawyers, and they don't do any e-learning at all. And they have people flying from office to office to do the same training. Like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe how backwards this firm is behind other organizations I've worked for. Come to find out, they were ahead of the curve in legal. They were thinking about e-learning back in, this is the early 2000s. They were thinking about e-learning when nobody else was. And so once I realized that, I saw newly fallen snow that nobody had ever walked across. I'm like, there's a whole industry here and nobody's doing anything. There was absolutely no e-learning. There were videos, you could get a video sent to you in the mail or something like that, but there was no like on-demand learning like we know it today. And so I decided to make a go of it. I decided, I'm going to see if I can make this into a business and see if other firms would be interested. So I did a lot of work with Howry. It was very visible. They won a bunch of awards, which I kind of rode their coattails on. And we built a pretty cool thing there. We built Howry University, all online. It was with, well, it wasn't all online, but it was led by their online component. And from there, I ended up getting a chance to write a book for the American Bar Association called E-Learning for Law Firms in 2005, 2006. And that just kind of got me out there. And
just out of curiosity, how did that, you see, you just wrote a book. It doesn't just happen. First of all, writing a book is hard goddamn work, right? But did they approach you? Did you approach them? Like, how did you get that momentum? Because certainly that helps.
I got to know somebody, I think, I'm trying to remember, it was a long time ago. I got to know the people who worked at this part of the ABA. ABA is huge, but this portion, the publishing arm of the ABA, I got to know some of the folks there through conferences and things like that.
Okay.
And they saw me speak and they said, basically, hey, we would love to collaborate with you if you want to, if you'd be interested in doing something like this. We publish books. And so I explored it. I'd never written a book before. I had no idea what went into it. Now, there are books and there are books. Like, if you look at the book I wrote in 2006, it's like a matzah. It's like this thick, right? It's like, it's like you think book, but it was a book. And it was published by the ABA and actually sold really well, relatively speaking, for a while. Yeah. And it kind of got me out there. And so I started building a business where I was working with large law firms to help them build. This was all custom development. There was nothing off the shelf. It
This
wasn't
is
subscription
this is
based.
SkillBurst, or this is before SkillBurst? You're talking about
This is before SkillBurst. This is you know, years ago, before I started SkillBurst, and I'll tell you why in a second. So I started building this business up. Started getting invited to speak at some of the PD conferences, the legal professional development conferences, and that was all, you know, all great. I built a nice roster of clients, and it was fun. But every time I'd go in, I was really pounding the pavement. I mean, it was me and just a handful of people who were helping me at the time. And I was really pounding the pavement, trying to get into any firm I could go see. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be in, you know, Chicago. Can I swing by and see you? And if I got 3 or 4 of them who said yes, then I'd fly to Chicago. You know, I was doing those kind of things.
Good for you. Good for you.
And so I was pounding the pavement, and I heard the same kind of thing pretty much over and over again. People would, sure, come on, Steve. Oh, yeah, I saw you speak, or you read your book, or heard you had a book, or whatever. Come on in. I'd love to hear what other firms are doing, which is the way I would pitch it. So they'd feel like they were behind. And then I'd get in there and I'd do my little spiel, and I'd get a lot of, wow, that's really cool, Steve. Very cool. It'll never work here at our firm, but it's really cool. And I got that over and over again. Like the thought in their, you know, early mid 2000s of lawyers sitting at a computer and doing training was so foreign. People were just like, it's not going to happen. And it's a great idea, Steve, and we'll keep you in mind, but maybe for this one topic, but we don't have the budget for it now, and we'll keep you in mind. So I did it for a few years, and then what I realized is it was just the industry wasn't ready. So I got out. I had an opportunity to sell the little thing that I had built to somebody who had a product for legal, and they wanted to leverage the relationships. It was, you know, nothing to write home about, but it was a way for me to exit gracefully and not say, if, you know, this didn't work. And then I went and did other things. I went in to an AM law firm and was their first senior director of professional development, and moved into leading talent for them. So I was on the other side for a while. And then I went and worked for a PE platform company for a few years in the government consulting space. And I did some other stuff. I was a senior fellow at Harvard for a little while as well. So I did some other things. And then I kind of, at one point I went, all right, now what am I going to do? It's time to grow up. What am I going to do now? And Heather Bach, God love her, was now at Hogan Lovells and said, we would just keep in touch. You know, she was a friend. We keep in touch. We had coffee one day, and she's like, oh, you don't have anything going on? Well, we're about to try and reproduce what we did at Howry, so come help us again. I was like, sure, why not? Ended up doing that. And then word started getting around that, oh, Steve's doing that e-learning thing again. We should have him come in. Oh, can he come talk to our conference? And all of a sudden I went, I think the industry is ready right now. So I had my first real introduction to the concept of timing is everything. I thought I had a great idea. I saw an industry that was ready for it. I thought had a huge need. There were no players in the space. I'm like, I'm going to take this industry by storm. And it kind of piddled out. And then years later, I kind of stumbled back into it, and the industry was ready. And that's when SkillBurst was born. And that was 13 years ago.
Wow. Thank you for that. That really gives a lot of context. And yeah, luck, timing, hard work. I've heard so many times people say, I'll be in Chicago next month, and they weren't planning on it. And that leads to opportunity. So those are good reminders for anyone in the legal tech industry trying to hustle and grow. Mm-hmm. Can you just take us through what SkillBurst was, I guess, maybe when you first started it, and how that evolved until you sold it, just to get a sense? Because I understand you helped them. Mm-hmm. And just for full context, there's on one end, on-demand CLE courses, whether it's Lawline or somebody else. It's an hour video. Maybe it's even a 5-hour learning path that has different things and things like that, but they're all 1 hour, you get credit. Mm-hmm. Now take us through what was it that you're aiming for, at least initially, and then how did you evolve at SkillBurst?
Sure, yeah, it definitely did evolve over time. So when we started out, we were 100% bespoke training, 100% custom development. We didn't have anything off the shelf. So a firm would come to us and say, you know, we want to build an overview of M&A basics for our new associates. Great. We'll sit down with your subject matter experts. We'll get the content. We'll build an interactive e-learning course. We've never, I shouldn't say never, but it was very rare that we would do talking head video for our experts on camera. That's not what we did. We built graphics-based, video-based, interactive courses. Very, very interactive. It wasn't a passive learning experience. But we would build all of that from scratch for each client for every course that they would develop. And over time, the content really varied. It went from, I mean, you name it, we probably built it at one point for a firm, whether it was internal policies like HR policies, or, how to do a conflicts check, or, something like that, to, IT security. We would build courses on business development. We would build courses on technical legal. We would do law updates. We would do, I mean, you name it, whether it was a legal focused topic or an internal or an HR or business development, or we built everything. And the topics were all over the map. And it was interesting because I was in the early days, I was involved in every course. And so got exposed to a lot of really good content, the really smart people in these firms coming up with this content that they wanted to share. I learned so much about so many topics that I never wanted to learn about, never thought I wanted to learn about.
The content experts were the firms. You just
people in the firms. Yeah.
You help them. You used a LMS, a third-party LMS, I assume, at that time.
But usually the LMS would be wherever the firms hosted the final course, and usually they had something internal or a third party that they were using. Yeah,
we didn't. So you helped them design. I don't know, taxonomy. I don't know if that's the right term for this. But design if this then that, then this then that. Like what were you?
We would do we would talk with. So they would say, we want to build a course on X, and here are the three smart people in our firm who know all about it. So we would sit down and talk with them, instructional design. So we would do instructional design with them. Thank you. So we would sit down and go, what are your learning objectives? Who is your target audience? What are you trying to accomplish? What have you been doing? Oh, you had a PowerPoint that you would take in and go, from office to office and do this, and you're sick of doing it. Give us that PowerPoint. Oh, you had a recording on VHS of you doing this years ago. Give us the recording. Let's take a look at it. And we would take all that, distill it down, and create the outline or the content for a course. And then we would give it to them to review. Does this look right? Do you have anything you want to change? Once we had that, then we would go in with professional narrators and graphics developers, and we would create a really polished course. Lots of times there were, some kind of exercises. I never liked just the multiple choice, true, false kind of exercises, just to make sure people were listening. I really liked scenario-based training whenever we could do it. Here's a scenario. What would you do? Following different paths if we could. So a lot of firms, they wanted to offer CLE credit for it. If they were an accredited provider, we'd work with them to make sure that that all the stuff was into the course that would allow them to actually track that and give credit for it. So that's how we started. That's all we were doing for years. And then we started getting a lot of firms doing the same topics over and over again. There was probably, we joked about it in the company. It was probably a 12 to 18 month period where we must have done 14 or 15 timekeeping best practices custom courses for firms where, and we worked really hard to make sure that we kept every one we did was different, because we didn't want everything ever to look like, whoa, I paid you to build this, but it looks a lot like the one you did for Cooley over here. We never wanted to do that. There's only so much you can say from firm to firm about timekeeping best practices. And so at some point, it kind of dawned on us that maybe we should build something off the shelf that we can allow people, we can build the 90% and let them customize the last 10% to make it theirs. And so we started down that path, just as kind of a, let's see if anybody's interested. And they were interested. We put together, we got, I think 13. What I'd said was we were going to do one of them as a proof of concept. So we did timekeeping best practices. And then what we said internally was, we want to build this out to a full library now if we can, but let's see if there's a there. So we went to 15 firms and said, we're going to build this library. If you will agree to be our first clients and you will put up money before anything actually even exists, we'll call you a first in firm. You'll get all kinds of perks. You can help shape the library. So you can tell us what topics go into it. You can, we're going to give you branding for free and this, that, and the other thing. And we'll pull it out a press release saying you're one of the firms that's part of this consortium. And if we can get 10 firms out of the 15 we reached out to or whatever, then we were going to go ahead and build this. And we let them know, if we don't get 10 firms, we're not going to do it, just to let you know. And so within like a week and a half, we had 13 firms say yes. So it was it was the writing on the wall, and then we plowed forward.
I want to pause there for a minute, because that is such a step that so many companies miss.
Oh, what's that? Just the buy-in?
Well, there's a really great book called Monetizing Innovation.
Okay.
And actually I interviewed what is it called when you have a brain fart? I interviewed him. It's gonna hit me in a second. Eddie Hartman. He actually was one of the co-founders for LegalZoom, and he was a Lawline customer, but now he's a partner at this firm. And the book, what it talks about is why so many companies fail when they're trying to monetize a product. And the traditional path a company goes is like, they have an idea, they build it, they design it, they do the marketing about it, and then at the very end they're like, what should we charge for this? And so the whole point of monetizing innovation is, you have the idea, before you do any of that, you reach out to companies, and through surveys or conversations, you say, will you pay for this if it has this, or this? Or would you pay somewhere between this and this? And that takes a lot of energy and work, but at least you understand where the market is, and then you understand the pain points, and you can kind of work that out a little bit. And then you can even say you could be a first client, and we will give you perks and things like that, which is super interesting. And like, that's a textbook example of like how you build a product. But that that's not easy to do. Like, maybe you had the relationships already, but
we did. Yeah.
It's still okay. That's helpful. But a lot of us we're excited about idea. We like building, and you end up building things that nobody want, or maybe they want, but not really at the way it's done. So,
or they say, or sometimes be like, you can just have an informal conversation. If I built this, would you be interested? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. But then when it comes time to put pen to paper, and a
year later, it's done. You're like, oh, okay. We'll
yeah, exactly.
So when you said perks and branding and things like that, so you're saying like, okay, you had this course, let's say on time keeping and billing. You would in that course put Cooley's logo or a firm's logo and say, we want to thank our first client partners, things like that.
Well, we didn't put into the course itself. We was in our marketing materials and our press releases and stuff like that. Okay. But in what we did with these courses is, when a firm subscribed to our library, and these are all professional skills training, mostly was the topics we're talking about. When we would put these libraries, the subscription out there, when a firm would subscribe, the first thing we would say is, how do you want to customize it to make it your own? So you could take it just the way it was, vanilla, off the shelf, but we could put in your links to your policies. We could put in your terminology. Greenberg Traurig doesn't call them partners. They call them shareholders. Okay, we'll change the terms in the course for you. Like, to make it, our whole goal was, we wanted the courses to feel like the firms did have them custom developed just for them. But we were trying to make it cost efficient so they didn't have to.
Totally. So you're saying you were able to customize a couple slides here or there
some of it got really involved. Some firms would be like, this is great, we want to add 10 more minutes of content. Or we'd have a firm in Canada go, this is great, we want the whole thing in French. Or, so some of it got involved.
So that gets me thinking, now you got me thinking operationally.
Yeah.
It's one thing to build a course that's you're selling, but now you're talking about a course that you can customize. So what kind of site are we talking about here? Or is each one a mini site that you copy the course over, then you can add different pieces to it? Like, how does that work?
So the way our subscription service worked is, and still does under Barbary, is that firms would subscribe to a certain number of courses. So, I want 25, I want 45, I want 85, whatever number of courses that they were interested in, they would subscribe. And then we would do the customization on those courses if they had any. We would do the branding, so it had their logo.
But I actually mean the actual building of the course. What was the platform you were like? Because again, if we have a course on Lawline or we have a whole curriculum, we can't just customize parts of it right now for different firms because it's on one area, which is how most platforms are. Yeah. So how are you able to do that? Like,
so
how did you build that?
So we had the way that we set up our authoring was we built everything with customization in mind from the beginning. So, and again, these weren't It's a lot harder if you're shooting like a video of a subject matter expert talking, and then you want to change what some of the words they said were, or add more content. That gets really difficult because you can't be like, hey David, can you come back and wear the exact same stuff you were wearing and comb your hair the same way because we got 10 more minutes of content we want to do for this one firm. Like you can't do it. So, but the fact that our stuff was text and graphics on screen, and we built it knowing in the beginning that we were probably going to be going in and editing those things later on. So we had a whole team that just did customizations for firms on existing stuff. So we built the stuff from the beginning knowing that it was going to be customized, and then the authoring tools that we used were set up for that.
What was the tools? What is the
We used a whole suite of tools, but the primary tool was the Articulate suite of
oh my God, I haven't heard the term Articulate in such a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah.
Because back in the days, like when I was like, oh, we need to build a SCORM compliant platform and this or that, and you use Articulate, and I'm like, I was dabbling in that or in the early days of Lawline, but it didn't really fit with on-demand CLE where it's essentially a talking head.
Yeah.
But it's great to hear. I'm sure they've evolved a lot over the years.
They have, and like anything else, it's like you can use Word to write a book, but it depends on what you do with it, right? Word's a great tool, but you got to know what you're doing in there, and you got to put good content in and all that. So it's the same way with the tools, and our guys got to be super experts in it. Yeah.
And are you using did you build your own platform, or are you using a third-party LMS that hosts?
So we built our own LMS, but we also supported everything we built was, the industry standard, SCORM compliant, to speak, in e-learning terms. So we built everything to that industry interoperability standard so that any firm who wanted to host it internally, they could on their existing LMS, or if they had another third party who had an LMS, they could put it on there as well.
So over the years, how many courses did you build? Or I don't know if you call them a course. How many do you call them?
So modules that we had in our actual subscription-based library, we had a few hundred. But if you count all the courses that we built custom, bespoke over the years,
just a mod. Yeah, that's yeah. And when you build one of those modules, what are you talking? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours to build it? 5 hours? Like
it depends on the topic, and it depends on how involved it is. It really varies greatly because first of all, first you have to figure out what's going to go in the course from a content standpoint. Then you had to actually build the actual graphics and all the animations and the interactive elements. Then you had to get the narrators involved, and so it was a lot to build one of these. So we really had to think that it was going to sell before we would build one, that there was an interest.
For sure. And you mentioned instructional design. Is that your background? Did you? Because I saw you
got into it, but I was never formally trained.
Did you hire experts in instructional design?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you familiar with what Hotshot is doing with their box? Like that is, I love it. I love the concept because it's similar. It reminds me of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to have all the tools that they need, but also customize it and teach it the way that their firm does M&A or
that's the way to do it.
Rooms and things like that.
Yeah, no, they have a real smart approach.
Yeah, no, Ian's great. He's got a lot of good stuff. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. And did we get caught up to when you sold to Barbary? This is how you were doing it, or how you'd evolved another way?
It continued to evolve. We continued to create other libraries as well. So the offering, the approach was the same, but we built harassment awareness training to meet different. We built what our clients asked us to build. So when firms would come to us and be like, "Do you have a course on X?" When we heard it a number of times, then we would go ahead and build it. So we were building a lot of custom-based harassment awareness compliance training courses to meet New York's requirements or California's requirements or Illinois' requirements. So we built a library of those and offered those on a subscription basis. Again, customizing the heck out of them for firms, and that worked really well for us. Then we went into Gen AI and we built the first library of on-demand courses for lawyers on how to use and leverage AI, generative AI, in a smart, efficient, confidential, safe way. So we built that and launched that a few years back.
It's so interesting. A few years back, probably everything in
like,
that course is out of date to some
well,
degree.
it's interesting because some of the stuff, I mean, timekeeping best practices or how to be a good communicator, that doesn't change that often.
Yeah.
You start building courses on generative AI, yeah, you got to keep up big time on those. So we were constantly, by the time we got to, module 8, we were going back and looking at module 1 again. So definitely true.
I can imagine the value proposition for a firm who like originally wanted you to create a custom course.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're like on timekeeping, and now
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, actually, we have one, and I'm sure it was, I don't know, let's just make up a number. If it was $10,000 or $100, what percentage was this now module versus a fully customized course in terms of the cost savings for a firm?
So it was a significant savings if you just look at that one course. But the great thing is that we got them. There was so many good things about this approach. One is obviously as a business owner, you can appreciate that the build once, sell many times is a much better model than the build once, sell once, which is what we were doing under custom. And so there were some significant savings for the firms just on the module to module level. But we didn't sell just, oh, you want just timekeeping best practices? Okay, we sold a library. So they would have to come in at a bigger price point, which is great. And they got a lot of benefit from that too. But between just us and anybody who's watching, the best thing about this approach and the customization component as well is that our product was super sticky. So meaning that if a firm subscribed to our library and it was just off the shelf and they would just take it as it is, they could switch to another library fairly quickly. But if they worked with us to customize the courses and they paid a one-time fee to do those customizations, then we spent money to customize this for us. It looks like us, it sounds like us. We can't just go replace that. It was a very sticky product. And so that's why our year-over-year renewal rates for our subscription services were 95, 96% plus, which is just, kind of a ridiculous number.
That is such a great story. I love it. And so let's circle back to like selling and being approached. And you said you had your best year ever. What went through, and you said, yeah, you couldn't scale internationally and you were looking to that. Did you, to some degree, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you're just tired, or sometimes everybody needs it feels good to have an exit because there's a bit of safety, or growth was still growing, but not to the level that you envisioned, that you wanted to double, triple the company every year or something to that degree. And you're at 10%, 20%. What were some of the things going through your head when you realized, okay, let's at least have this conversation and go through the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there were
these are some of the things, vulnerable, like these are things I think about when people approach to me.
Yeah, any business owner. Yeah, of course. Well, I think one of them, I mean, a lot of what you just said factored into it. I mean, there was like the plateaus I was talking about. We weren't at a plateau at all from a revenue standpoint. Like I said, we had our biggest growth year the year we were acquired. And so there's a little bit of, I don't know if you watched Seinfeld. Do you remember Seinfeld with, there was an episode where George Costanza, I can't remember it exactly, but he's like, he decided that anytime he told a good joke and people laughed, he would leave on a high note. So he would be at a dinner party. He just got there and he would tell a joke. People would laugh and be like, "Good night, folks." And he'd walk out of the apartment. That's kind of where I was thinking. It's like, we're having a really good year. We're growing like crazy. There's a lot of good things happening right now. We've got this really, internationally well-known brand, a great group of people who have expressed an interest in us. Like, why not? It's a great story right now. Why not take advantage of it?
Let's go to the final questions here. And then I'm going to give you the last question or two if you have one, because I always feel like guilty when I'm asking all these like deep, vulnerable questions. And you don't have to, but you can put me on the spot in the last minute or two. I'll go back to where we started. And can you give me one or two other books or podcasts that you've listened to that help you if there's any top of mind?
There aren't any other top of mind that I do regularly.
Or a book that you've read in your career. The Success Principles was a huge book for me that's transformed my life. In addition to Built to Last, was there any that were transformative?
Yeah, one of the topic areas that's really been of interest to me over the years, and I've read quite a bit in, is leadership. leadership development. So anything by Ron Heifetz, Leadership Without
Okay.
Easy Answers, Leadership on the Line. There's a few others. And one of the things I really like about his book is it's not, or his books and his teachings. He's at Harvard, or at least he was. Um, what I like about it is not the traditional, it doesn't blur management and leadership. It's true leadership training. And a lot of times when you read leadership books, they really start talking about management, which always drives me crazy. So he really focuses in on leadership. But one of the things I really like about his books is that he talks about how you don't always have to be in a leadership quote unquote position to be a leader. And that always resonated with me when I wasn't. There were times when earlier in my career when I wasn't
Yep.
in a CXO role. And so he calls it, what is this phrase he uses in his books? It's being on the balcony or being on the dance floor. He talks about
Okay.
the juxtaposition between the two and how, you can lead from anywhere. So leading without authority. I think that might be in one of his other books too, Leading Without Authority. And so I've always found those books to be really interesting because of his take on leadership. And so and I've tried to use a lot of those principles in my business when I'm actually, trying to quote unquote lead.
It is great to hear that. Like, 'cause so often you see all these self-help books and people are like, oh, they don't do anything. And I'm like, every successful person I speak to, they talk about a book that
Yeah.
was a self-improvement or a leadership book or built to
Yeah.
last that was transformative for them. So I appreciate
Hmm.
that. I know we're at
Sure.
the top of the hour. Do you have
Yeah.
time to ask a question or two? Or do you,
Oh,
I
of
don't know if you,
course. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So I'll give it to you. And
Okay.
again, no pressure if you don't have one.
Yeah.
I just feel better when I know I give someone the chance to put me on the hot
All
seat
right. Yeah. I
if
got a
they're
couple
ready.
for you. I got a
Uh-oh.
couple for you.
Now I'm nervous.
So I got two for you that comes straight to mind. So one is, well, I'm going to start with this one first. So you've been doing Lawline longer than I did SkillBurst. And, from where I'm sitting, I'm not privy to your books or anything like that, but from where I'm sitting, you have a very successful business. So what's keeping you from an exit? Are you waiting for some specific thing? Do you like doing what you're doing and you don't want to move on? Or, like what's keeping you from doing what I did?
I think that is a good question. There's two components to that.
Hmm.
One, whether right or wrong, I know many people who've exited and had a similar story that you did.
Okay.
And because I'm part of I was part of
Right.
entrepreneurs organization for 17 years, and now I'm part of YPO.
Right.
And truth is, for me, it would need to be a big enough exit where like I have the choices of what I want to do or where I'm going to go.
Hmm.
And I still, for better or worse, I'm having a lot of fun at Lawline.
That's
And
great.
with that said,
Yeah.
the challenge of growth is as
Yeah.
we've grown, it gets harder and harder because the bigger
Of
you are.
course. Yeah.
And so I every couple of years, like, and there was a time when we were getting calls all the time, and I was similar to you. I was taking the calls and I was doing that,
Hmm.
and at some got to that point where like maybe a couple of things went a different way, I would have be singing a different tune. So
Sure.
certainly, I'm similar to you. I'm always open to conversations.
Hmm.
I I still believe we have a couple tricks up our sleeves in the next few years
Okay.
that will, if I am ready to do that, will make it more interesting.
Hmm.
And secondly, I truly don't have a what's next plan
Yeah.
yet. And yeah, so those are the two things. But I'm always open to conversations and moving forward. And maybe I'm just not smart enough to sell. Like, no, but some degree, like, what you said the morning after, you're like, did I get ripped off?
Mm.
And I think I am going to get ripped off, or for whatever degree from the beginning. But luckily, it's not something that's needed to do.
Right.
But certainly, when I went to law school, my goal was to have a career for the next 20 years. I thought as a lawyer, it's been
Hmm.
17 years. So
Mm.
maybe in 3 years, we'll
Maybe
see
in
where
3 years.
we're at. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Fair
exactly.
enough. All right. That's a good answer. All right. And I guess the other one is it looks, from the outside, just from social media land, it looks like you've done a really good job of, I hate the phrase work-life balance because I've just never liked that term, but it looks to me like you're doing a good job with whatever you want to call that. You're being out there doing adventurous stuff, traveling, moving to different places, and getting involved with all these other organizations, these entrepreneurial organizations, stuff like that. Is that something that you like really set your mind to do, or is that something that's recent, or is that something that's always been there?
Thank you for that question, because it's actually been I feel very grateful. It's been very purposeful.
Okay.
There's two things that I always knew was important to me, was agency over my time.
Yeah.
And the ability to create a culture that gave other people personal freedom to do that. Actually, and this is not me just like looking backwards and saying, oh, this is what we did. Right. Maybe in 2016, we created a mission for the business. It was personal freedom. And originally it was designed towards lawyers, like creating CLE courses that was personal freedom for them. But then very quickly thereafter, everybody started absorbing that. Oh, how can Lawline, all the team, how can it create personal freedom for me? And we started doing things. This is, back in the days, we all had desktops. Within a year, we all got laptops. Then we got work from home Wednesdays. And then we got all these different areas. We started doing things to do that. And then I moved to Barcelona with my family and right before COVID. Yeah. And we also hired a coach from helped us. Scaling Up was the book from Vern Harnish, which is similar to EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System. So we built a structure and process where I became the visionary of the business. And then there was an integrator or the COO who would run the day-to-day and build all that. So we have built a subscription business as well, where it builds on itself. And so it is something I'm very focused on to some degree. If I would probably argue sometimes I'm leaning too heavily on the life part, which I don't regret at all, because that's what my kids, you can, and you mentioned college. I have twins who are juniors in high school. We've looked at 17 colleges this year to see where they're at. Where did your daughter end up?
So she goes to school in Vermont.
Okay.
In Vermont, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm learning a whole new language of like the school process. And I've always believed you can make more money, but you can't make more time.
No, that's true.
And for me, the biggest core memory areas is when I travel with my kids, whether it's like 2 hours from the house or to Barcelona or we do a lot of big trips. So I'm lucky to do that. So it's very much by design and so what I'm trying to design now is, and I'm working really hard at it, is where I get the most energy is by sharing and teaching. And I want to help other people, whether you're a business owner or you're an individual, have more agency over your time. And it doesn't have to be moving to Barcelona, but it has to be, you have to design it ahead of time. You have to think about that and you have to put that forward, because that to me is what's transformational. And doesn't mean having all the free time in the world. Actually means sometimes you're more busy because you're doing things. And so, that's what gets me going. And to some degree, I'm very jealous of what you built, because my focus has always been lifelong learning. And we're in a mandatory continuing education business where we have a lot of great content, a lot of great value. And we've built things, and we get testimonial every day. We see thousands of testimonials of customers who get more value than just the credit from the course. But my passion is helping people realize their full potential. I mean, that's essentially everybody. That's how you've hit your life. And so that's where I'm hoping my next phase will be, and my phase right now. And that's where I see the next 10, 15 years helping. Cool. And maybe you'll be doing something similar in the legal space, and I can help you.
That'd be great.
Cool. Well, thank you for helping me do a brain fart to help figure out my life in the last 2 minutes.
Anytime, David.
Steve, I'm so glad we got to speak finally.
Yeah, same here.
And I'm looking forward to connecting with you in person and in other places in the future. If I could be of any help with your stealth in any form, I love giving feedback. And I will not share it, but I love giving feedback on things as a
awesome. I might take you up on that one. Thanks. Yep. Cool. We need all the input we can get right now.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, David. Take care. Bye.